of the issue in West Africa is containing the Ebola virus. There's a lot of misinformation, a lot of distrust, and as a result, it's hard to contain the virus and people continuously contract it. Now, one of the biggest issues also includes people who keep stealing things that involve fluids that might be infected with Ebola. Jeez. Case in point, bandits stopped a taxi that was carrying blood samples of a possible Ebola patient. Now, this is in Guinea, and part of the issue is they don't have proper transportation in order to move medical supplies about, blood samples about, and as a result, these bandits probably thought that what they were stealing included flasks that had money hidden in it. Right now, authorities don't know why they would want to steal blood, but they're guessing, all right, maybe these bandits didn't even know that it was blood. Maybe they thought that it was something more valuable. Nonetheless, people are very, very worried about this because the samples could be infected with Ebola, and it could lead to the virus spreading further. And you know, the more you read about this story, the more you realize that in West Africa, a lot of these places don't have the infrastructure necessary to contain the virus, right? In fact, crazy statistic, it turns out that in some places, for instance, I believe it's Sierra Leone, only 13% of the people who have contracted the virus are in isolation, meaning that they're quarantined. Only 13%. That is a disaster. That shows you that they do not have the infrastructure necessary to deal with this issue. And again, now you have the issue of bandits, issues with looters who will go into these quarantined hospitals and steal things like pillows and sheets and things like that that have been infected with the bodily fluid of these Ebola patients. And so it's a really bad situation. And of course, there's millions of dollars of foreign aid being poured into that region of Africa. However, it's still proving to be difficult to contain the virus.
It's a staggeringly depressing story. And I don't know what our response is supposed to be. Mm-hmm. I know it's supposed to be something. And I know that, like, you know, we have this big success story where we expunged Ebola here, right? And we didn't save the last guy, but we can come in, we can treat people, we can not spread it, we can get them better or not. But we clearly need to be massively involved there to make things better, because it's going to, otherwise the risk runs may be small, but that it does come here and comes here in a way that we can't control. And that requires, I presume, a significant expenditure. We already have troops on, we already have boots on the ground over there, but we need to spend money on this. And it's almost impossible politically to convince the American people, convince voters, can convince Congress that we need to spend money in West Africa, mostly to save a bunch of Africans.
I mean, the big argument was, why don't we just isolate the problem and ban travel, which was a terrible idea, and of course it wouldn't have worked, because you can't really ban travel. I mean, think about how easy it would be to just go to another country and travel to West Africa that way, and then you don't have the ability to track people when they're coming back to the United States, and if they possibly also contracted the virus, you wouldn't be able to know, right? But it's kind of, what amazes me about this story is the level of fear-mongering that existed when it first broke, and how little the media seems to care about the story now. It was the flavor of the month. It's what everybody talked about for a few weeks, and then that was it. Now we're talking about other things, right?
In a weird way, doesn't that seem like that's the biggest threat here, is we dealt with it in America so quickly and so well, as much as there were little things at the hospital in Dallas and et cetera, but that it's off our plate now. And now we've got a ton of other stuff going on between immigration and Ferguson and whatever, right. And then as American, we can only deal with one thing at a time. So it's like, it's off our plate, which means that of course the resources aren't gonna go over there when it was happening here, they weren't really going over there. So they're certainly not going to go over there now. And we really are one world. So, you know, the idea that you shut down travel, of course, then they just come through Canada and then walk through. I mean, I'm sure you guys all saw the movie Contagion, and without being too hyperbolic, you know, it starts in one weird little place or one vial of something that gets stolen accidentally, and then so yeah, it's not over, even though for the moment it feels like it's over.
If this is really a crisis, why haven't we bombed Sierra Leone?
That's a good point. We should do some.
Why don't we just tell people, you don't want to give? They're not going to. People don't want to give money to fight this in West Africa because it's not threatening us now. Well, what if we say we're going to bomb them? That's all. Why we always have blow bomb money, don't we?
We have a bomb fund. We have a rainy bomb fund.
Yeah. Rainy bomb fund.
But it's also how we don't cover the story correctly. Is that we blew all our energy covering the nonsense part of that story and the fear. Whereas the story, like climate change, is not a story about whether there's 70 inches of snow in Buffalo.
Right. Mm-hmm.
It's a story about the globe warming, and this is a story about a significant efforts needed to fight a communicable disease.
It's hard to catch it, actually.
Right,
I think
it's
is what
hard to
you're trying
catch
say.
it, but you can give it to someone else, and when you do, it's lethal. Right. And you need to teach about that, and you need to treat people. But we instead focused on the Donald Trump part of the story, and we tried to make it seem here that how crazy all that was. But you get drowned out, and CNN covered as if the whole focus of the story is going to be look at them cordoning off the house in Dallas, and look at the ambulance in Atlanta as it drives in, and look at the guys in the hazmat suits. The real story is complicated, and it's boring. It's super boring. But that's the way all these stories
That's the
are.
issue with all the important stories.
Yeah.
CNN though, they have Newt Gingrich and Wolf Blitzer both on the payroll, so they're a good news organization.